Now you'll tell me why Superman peanut butter tastes so great. Never.
Yes, folks, the time has officially come for me to review every single theatrically released Superman movie. And I'm clarifying theatrically released because I desperately need to get this video out before the new Superman comes out. Review embargoes have already been lifted, so if I'm to get this video out in time, we need to blaze through these. No complicated scoring system, no direct-to-video movies, no animated movies, just the theatrically released live-action Superman films that have his name somewhere in the title, or a title that he has held. Superman 78. This has an insanely long running time for a film from 1978, but I love that it opens with a child reading a Superman comic aloud. It makes the exposition feel both diegetic for the audience, but it also gives it a nostalgic kind of childlike feel. It works flawlessly. Speaking of hitting the nail on the head in the first try, the theme goes crazy, and the credits go even crazier. This is some classic cosmic comic stuff, and I love that the Superman theme by John Williams feels like Superman. When you hear it, your mind immediately visualizes him, and that's the sign of a good character theme. It rocks how much Marlon Brando really doesn't want to be here. It's absolutely insane that we got a Superman movie written by the dude that did the fucking Godfather, starring the Godfather, and they couldn't get him to pronounce Krypton correctly. Speaking of, Krypton, I feel like this was the first project to get the feel of the actual planet down. I love that all the technology is crystalline or levitation-based. It feels very alien and hostile, almost cold and clinical, which you need to contrast the later warmer scenes in Kansas. Speaking of changing things about Krypton forever, it's crazy that before these movies, Zod wasn't really a popular or particularly threatening Superman villain. Even in the short scene we get with him in this first movie, he's already insanely compelling. This is a top 5 comic book movie villain performance, people. I also like that we skip Clark discovering his own powers. We, the audience, are already introduced to them. We know Superman, so why would the movie spend precious time reintroducing them just to Clark? But the moment we see an older Clark misuse his powers, we still get the responsibility speech. It reminds me of how the MCU introduced Peter Parker, except not clunky as hell. We're also immediately hit with the death of Pa Kent. Not just in the same scene, but the same minute. It's a super compressed story, just like the Silver Age comics that it's trying to emulate. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to talk about the main performances in this quadrilogy just collectively, so I don't repeat myself a ton. First and foremost, the best aspect of these movies, Christopher Reeve. Best Superman, full stop. In every movement, every facial tic, every second he's on screen, you get the sense not just that he's pretending to be Clark Kent and having a hell of a lot of fun doing that, but also that he's clearly acting as Superman. And that's the mark of a great Superman performance, because the real guy, the real Clark Kent, is somewhere between Superman and Metropolis Clark. It's not just a masterful performance, it's the gold standard for an actor understanding the character they are portraying. Margot Kidder is also acting her entire ass off in these movies. She's amazing at playing what even back then would be seen as kind of an antiquated character if a lesser actor was in the role. You know, the fast-talking, sarcastic, big city reporter is a character that can easily just come off as comedic, but she gets some real fear and heart out of it, and it's a damn shame that the folks behind the camera straight up throw her out of these movies later down the line. They cut her role down more and more until she's almost gone entirely. The best scene out of all 4 of these movies, and maybe the best scene in any Superman movie, is just these two talking, because you almost forget you're watching a movie and not just two people who desperately want to cut the cameras and straight up devour each other. And on the other hand, Lex. Listen, if we're rating these movies just as their own thing, it's a great, fun villain performance that's equally threatening, and admittedly, there are a few lines and moments that feel very Lex Luthor. The problem is everything surrounding Lex. It's just odd. There's a lot of awkward comedy, bizarre visual gags, and for some reason, every movie in this series, they decide to saddle him with at least one or more unnecessary comedic sidekick. I will say he improves a lot throughout the second movie, but that's because he's not in it as much. In this first movie, I'm okay with Lex not being motivated by his hatred of Superman when they first meet. What I'm not okay with is Lex being motivated by solely financial gain via real estate. New ground rule: if this ain't the first time Lex is being openly evil, it needs to be entirely motivated by Superman. And if Superman hasn't gone public yet, I don't want to hear a goddamn thing about real estate. As for the plot, it's fine. Like, it's exactly what the first theatrical Superman movie needed to be. It's a relatively simple but entirely enjoyable origin story, capped off with a classic comic book struggle of not being able to be in two places at once. I know everyone hates the finale with Superman reversing time, but this movie came out in an era where you could 100% go down to your local newsstand and find a comic book issue where Superman does some insane shit like this. This was before John Byrne depowered him to hell and back. If you made this movie today, nah, I'd say scrap that ending. But for a Silver Age Superman in 1978, it works. 7.5 out of 10. Would have been an 8 if not for a lame Lex and some rather lackluster moments. Superman 2, hoo boy. I love a sequel that starts off right where the last one ended. It does need a subtitle though. Superman 2, Dawn of Bad Dubbing. Half of this movie is 80 yard in a tin can, and it's still somehow a certified classic. Like, this movie's just charming. I love the classic Superman style opening with a literal H-bomb on top of the Eiffel Tower. I love that a sizable chunk of this movie takes place in Idaho of all places, where the cops have sawed-off shotguns and say shit like holy skunk sweat. And speaking of charming, you cannot talk about this movie without the three main villains. Holy old god, what an upgrade from the last movie. Jack O'Halloran, Sarah Douglas, and the unsung champion of this entire quadrilogy, Terrence the Haunted Mansion Stamp.
My name is Ramsley.
Are so good in this movie that they kind of defined Zod and his cohorts for decades to come. Every word out of Stamp's mouth is instantly iconic. Ursa isn't a slouch either. I love the detail of her constantly taking badges from others like a little mobile trophy collection, and the running gag of Non not being able to use heat vision is a really solid joke. Thank God they're such good villains too, because they're kind of all this movie has going for it. The B-plot of this movie is Clark deciding to be human so we can start an actual full relationship with Lois. The issue is, while they had great chemistry in the last movie, we haven't spent enough time with them in this movie to get any sense that they've reached the level of love for each other that necessitates Clark giving up his greatest purpose in life. Lex is still here, obsessed with real estate, and still charmingly Gene Hackman. He takes over Australia for a while, and thankfully by the halfway point, he's fully shed his annoying sidekicks for at least one movie. But again, just like the last film, this is a giant send-up to the insanity and super compressed stories of Silver Age Superman. And Silver Age Supes did quit being Superman like 15 different times for various ridiculous reasons. Lex did have ridiculous plans, like convincing 3 aliens to let him conquer Australia. I'm also supremely intrigued and simultaneously pissed off by how this got made. Basically, the original intention was to shoot the first and second movies simultaneously, hence why Zod and his crew were already cast in the first film. It's a tight, efficient way of filming planned sequels that a lot of big-budget movies used to do, like Lord of the Rings. The issue is that Richard Donner and the producers started clashing hard, and so a decision was made to halt the nearly finished Superman 2 and just focus on finishing the first movie. This led to the crew of Superman 2 threatening to mutiny if Donner didn't receive credit for the second film. I mean, he filmed nearly the whole damn thing. I agree with the crew. So, the producers called in a new director, Richard Lester, to reshoot all the footage they had. So what we're left with is the director of A Hard Day's Night basically doing an impression of footage that already existed. And so a lot of this movie has this odd tone and bizarre framing. It feels more like a slick, modern version of the first movie, while also feeling like I'm watching an SNL sketch from that era, if that makes sense at all. Like, it'll transfer instantaneously from an action-packed moment straight into a shot of a random guy who looks straight out of Cruisin' walking 3 poodles. And action-packed may have been an exaggeration, because while some of it is genuinely amazing stuff for the time, this must have been a fucking spectacle to see in theaters. At other times, it's clear they probably shouldn't have hired a dude mostly known for comedies starring musicians to direct 4 impossibly strong super beings throwing each other around a major city. I do love the citizens of Metropolis squaring up with Zod, though. I'm always a sucker for the denizens of a city defending the hero that normally defends them. But the finale, while not as exciting or fun as the Metropolis fight, did give us the most underrated Superman superpower. A random unexplained shrink-wrap bubble chest symbol grenade. But no, for real, the finale of this movie just falls apart. The characters just start throwing out the most random, insane powers that even Dick Sprang wouldn't have penciled into a newsprint page. But admittedly, I do like the bit where Lex Luthor, ruler of Australia, immediately rats on Clark's plan. And hey, at least the molecular rearranger machine thingy was finally useful. And that final scene with Lois and Clark is just heartbreaking. Like, if the rest of the movie was this well acted, it'd be some Oscar-worthy gold. I wouldn't be shocked if this was one of the scenes that Donner fully filmed. The amnesia kiss is admittedly an ass pull of Hirohiko Araki level proportions, but it feels more like a studio note than a choice by the returning writer Puzo, probably due to Margot Kidder being one of the people who was so adamant that Donna receive credit, but the little capper with the diner fight is always a classic. I feel like with a rewrite, you could easily make this into a story about Clark having to confront the issues of his Kryptonian heritage head-on. But for now, it's just a pretty wacky Superman flick that has some amazing villains. The platonic ideal of a basic Superman film. 7.9 out of 10. If you love Terrence Stamp as Zod. 6 out of 10 if you don't. Why was there so much product placement in this one? So, we've experienced 2 movies that set the bar for Superman adaptation going forward. We've got another one coming up, this time with massively popular actor and comedian Richard Pryor. Sounds great. What's the plot? Coffee bean treachery. I'm serious. Well, no, not just coffee bean treachery. We also go back to Smallville, because it's cheaper to film on sets and locations that are meant to be a small, sparsely populated town. This also introduces us to our new love interest for this film, Lana Lang, played by the absolute queen Annette O'Toole, who I mostly know for overacting the hell out of every scene in the It miniseries. Yes, I know she's in the show Smallville as Martha, but if I'm being brutally honest, I am just now rewatching that show all the way through for the first time. Lana is weird in this movie. She doesn't have a lot to do, and she's a much more passive character than Lois, who gets banished to Bermuda at the start of the film, and therefore the romance doesn't ring as genuine this time around, because, well, this is a comedy, so every moment with her is tinged primarily by humor. Everything from Clark dancing like a jackass at their high school reunion, to her comically drunk stalker, Brad. It's also just odd, because after we just had a movie about Clark realizing he can't be with Lois and erasing her memory, Clark decides to try falling in love again, but this time with a woman who already has a son who is heavily influenced by Superman and is planning on moving to Metropolis soon. And yeah, I said comedy. This entire movie is weighed down by constant bits. Pryor in his first scene as Gus Gorman is doing some genuinely solid acting. I love the bit where he gets preemptively angry at the clerk when he assumes she's about to call him a bum. It's such a small detail, but it really humanizes his character as an intelligent dude with a lot of pride who still just doesn't gel well with a lot of the world. And the moment where he discovers that he's naturally gifted with computers to an insane degree is really charming. I wish we got any of that in the rest of this movie. Every other scene with Gus just devolves into this mumblecore slapstick comedy nightmare where every other character is trying not to completely give up and deliver their lines, all while Pryor just wanders around the set hollering and mumbling before inevitably falling on his ass. And this all happened because you idiots asked Richard goddamn Pryor to improv in a PG movie. That's like caging a tiger. Come on, let him off the chain. If you're gonna hire Richard Pryor to be in your movie, you should probably make sure he actually fits the material and is allowed to do his normal shtick.
I'll slap you in the mouth with my dick.
This whole movie would be so much better and simpler if you focused on Gus as the main villain and kept that kind of volatile pride he had in his introduction, leading to him becoming the monster inside the supercomputer at the end. Because as it stands, Gus's role in this movie, the co-lead of the film, is to scam his job Office Space style, trick a country into having their coffee bean prices controlled by his bosses, he tries to poison Superman, then he causes a colossal oil spill in the middle of the ocean, builds the world's most powerful supercomputer, nearly kills Superman again, and then gets off scot-free at the end. He's just thanklessly running around doing the errands of the actual villains, a group of supremely boring characters consisting of an uppity rich dude who feels straight out of a 70s TV show, his sister who looks like an Austin Powers villain, and a woman whose only narrative role is that she has sex with evil Superman. That is all she does in this movie. Because yes, this movie has an evil Superman. The billionaire villains try to synthesize kryptonite at one point, and due to Gus screwing up and adding a random ingredient to the mix, the kryptonite doesn't poison Clark, it just makes him comically evil. And I will say, it's great that Christopher Reeve is clearly having so much fun with this performance. It's widely reported that Reeve hated working on this installment, so all I see is a guy finally being given the green light to channel all of that annoyance and disappointment towards the people behind the cameras. To this day, a lot of people still think someone else played this role and it was just clever makeup or lighting that made him look like Reeve. Which, of course, leads us to the one sequence anyone really remembers from this whole movie. If people say they like Superman 3, they're just talking about the junkyard fight. Listen, it's an impressive scene. It's impressive that they shot this fight in a way that you can't really see a double that well. It's impressive that Reeve is acting his ass off and straight up anamorphing into a rabid badger.
Come on, you come on, come on, come on!
but it's not really a great fight scene. They just loop the same spots over and over. Evil Superman throws Clark into some machinery, walks away, Clark escapes it, repeat. Also, for a scene that's far more dark and momentous than the rest of this movie, put this at the end. Let this be the final conflict for this movie, not a random bootleg Brainiac in a canyon somewhere. With a few rewrites, cuts, and a more subdued Richard Pryor, I feel like we could have had a really cheesy yet solid Brainiac and Bizarro movie. But for now, it's just a weird, slow, dry-ass comedy. If you want a better Christopher Reeve Brainiac story, read either the Jeff Johns Brainiac arc or Superman 78 by Robert Venditti. 4 out of 10. Lois shows back up at the end with a tan that legitimately jump-scared me. Superman for the Quest for Peace. Jesus Christ. This is it, folks. This is where we officially enter the Superman Dark Ages. This movie isn't just cheap, it's comically cheap, probably due to the new producers, Canon Pictures. I've talked about Canon on my TikTok page, discussing their Captain America movie and how they basically sabotaged and neutered the entire production, but here they were much more hands-off, primarily due to Reeve demanding that he have more creative control on this movie since he felt that 3 was a massive disaster and a film that he regretted making. They're also cheap as all shit. This movie reuses effects constantly, and it's not even subtle. This is Blade Trinity levels of reusing footage to stretch a budget. Which is a damn shame, because honestly, this movie sounds alright on paper, with Superman working towards the goal of worldwide nuclear disarmament, and Luthor using this as a chance to kill Superman with a new villain named the Nuclear Man. So, Nuclear Man is hilarious. He's the one aspect of this flick that kept me from straight up shutting it off. The dude playing him is literally named Mark Pillow. He's got acrylic nails, he dresses like a tapestry in the back of a crystal shop, and he's got this ridiculously deep voice. Sometimes you get a character like Harley Quinn, who's so popular in an adaptation that she actually becomes canon to the comics. And other times you get a villain so lame that he's only made canon in the comics just to kill him off. That's right, the comics treat this poor bastard just like Japanese Godzilla treats the 90s American Godzilla. Beyond him, the cast is mostly returning actors I don't have much more to say about. John Cryer is here as Lenny Luthor because, yeah, that's what Lex needed, another comedic sidekick. And while he'd play a later passable Lex, he's abysmal as Lenny. Truly the worst part of a movie that didn't have many good parts to begin with. No one walking into Superman 4 The Quest for Peace wanted commentary on the MTV generation with Ducky from Pretty in Pink. Folks, this is where I really started to run out of steam. This movie isn't uniquely bad, it's just there's nothing to really cover that I didn't discuss already. It's just a worse version of Superman 3, which was already a worse version of the first 2 films. It's like watching an elderly celebrity slowly get skinnier. Everyone can tell the end is nigh, and the glory days are long, long past. Chris, may you rest in peace, and I am so goddamn sorry that this was your last time as Superman. And I'm even more sorry that it was your script that finally killed the series. 2.9 out of 10. It's cheap, it's weird, and it's a little sad. If you're having a Superman marathon at home, this is the entry to bust out the edibles or go cook a pizza. Superman Returns, our first new cast in a Superman film. Folks, I have an admission. I did not finish this one. The way I prep for these videos is that I normally watch the movie once with my complete focus on the screen and another time whilst taking notes on stuff I want to mention. I tried to watch this movie 4 times. I fell asleep twice. The 3rd time, I chugged coffee beforehand and still fell asleep. The 4th time, I fell asleep with 15 minutes left, and I quite literally just gave up and jumped ahead to Man of Steel. And that's kind of this movie's entire curse. It's the forgotten Superman movie. It's the one that tried its damnedest to bring Superman into the new millennium, but only by paying lip service to the Donner films. Lex wears a wig and has a real estate scheme, Clark and Lois have relationship drama, yada yada, we've been here. If Superman 1 was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, this movie is, you leaned on it for so long that it broke. You crushed this under the weight of everything that came before it. And for some odd reason, this is one of the more visually dark entries. Like, if you're homaging the Donner movies, keep it bright, keep it poppy. But I found myself, at least while conscious, fiddling with my TV settings so I could just see more of what the hell was going on. The costumes and lighting themselves aren't dark, they're just color graded with this odd, hazy darkness all around them. On to the actors. Routh does fine as Clark Kent. He's much better in his later appearance on the CW, but we're only reviewing movies here, and here he's just kind of bland. If Christopher Reeve was the mold for what a basic good Superman should be, then Routh didn't break it. He didn't even strain it. He's basically just doing a low-rent Christopher Reeve impression, and it's a damn shame he didn't get to make this character his own until much, much later. Everyone else is doing alright too. All the performances are just very insecure, much like Routh. They can't seem to decide whether they're doing their own thing or sticking to the Donner performances, which, again, is fine if you take the big, wild swings that those actors did. But everyone is just so understated here that no one really stands out. With the exception of Lex. I've seen people call this the best Lex performance, but I do not care. You'll never know whether I like this portrayal or not because I'm not going to praise Kevin Spacey. And if I condemned his performance, then people would say, oh, you're just doing that because of what we know about him now. So I am going to completely ignore the Kevin Spacey aspect of this Lex. And without the performance, all you're left with is another real estate plot, and you know how I feel about those. I can see why people wanted this Superman to cross over with the Batman from Batman Begins. You get two versions of outlandish and inventive characters, and then boil them down to their most practical, palatable, and safe versions. 5 out of 10. When I was walking through a Best Buy with my dad in like 2011, he looked up at one of the TVs that was playing Superman Returns and quietly went, wait, when the fuck did they make another Superman movie? And now it's time for the most controversial Superman movies in cinematic history. It's insane to me that to this day, people still call this a bold new reimagining of Superman, when in reality, it's just a bizarre, edgy remix of the first two Superman movies. We've got Zod being sentenced to the Phantom Zone, we've got Clark discovering his powers and having a meet-cute with Lana, we've got Clark wandering around in the cold to find his true purpose. Hell, we even have a drunk asshole trucker getting into a fight with Clark. And while there's nothing wrong with homaging or even remixing the ideas present in those movies, it's just that it's all so gray and dickish here. Whenever I watch this movie, which, let me tell you, is not often, I feel like I've stepped into the Twilight Zone, because for years, one camp has been saying this is the real next step in Superman, and that Zack Snyder is a misunderstood genius, unfairly maligned and persecuted in his time. And the other camp acts like this movie burnt their house down and destroyed the public image of Superman permanently. Folks, this is the most by-the-numbers early 2010s reimagining of any pop culture character. This is the same bullshit they did with Robin Hood, Transformers, the Looney Tunes, Snow White, Star Trek, Prince of Persia, Frankenstein, Hansel and Gretel, and fucking Mickey Mouse. Zack Snyder wasn't the blueprint or the worst director in human history. He's just the most early 2010s director ever. Whenever I imagine what's going on in Snyder's head, it's just the Xbox 360 startup screen with Mumford & Sons blaring in the background. The blue-gray color grading, the obsession with all technology being smooth and gunmetal, the quick-cut action, the camera constantly shaking. It's all just so 2010s. It's also bizarrely paced. Similar to how Amazing Spider-Man tried to change the origin story by rearranging several key moments and meetings, Man of Steel does this as well, but just in editing. So instead of getting one cohesive narrative, for the first half of this movie, we just ping-pong between flashbacks and modern day. Thankfully, this somewhat stabilizes by the third act, but for that early bit, it is rough. I'd love to see a fan edit of this that puts the scenes in the actual order. Maybe they'd flow better? At the end of the day, what we're left with is a technically impressive movie with gray, muddy visuals that feels like I'm being greeted by a loved one, only to notice the tiny bit of blood on the edge of their ear and realize that someone has stolen their face and is wearing it. It's all just so off, revealing that Pa Kent died before the scene where he dies, having Lois meet Clark before he's Superman, and then immediately tracking him down over the course of only a few days on nothing but rumors and hearsay. It's all genuinely baffling. Having John Kent outright say that he is not Clark's father during an argument, and then immediately getting swallowed by an entire fucking tornado seconds later is not an interesting twist on Superman. It's a ridiculous farmhouse version of the Uncle Ben story. It's like listening to a cover of a Beatles song, but by Panic at the Disco. It immediately transports me back to a time in the 2010s where executives, producers, writers, directors, and yes, audiences legitimately thought, this is cool. This'll sell. This is what people want. But I've ranted enough about the aesthetics and story decisions of this movie. How's the cast? These movies star Henry, the worst Hellraiser movie, Cavill, god of everyone who thinks Catan is a good board game, and master of the mildly worried, disapproving scowl. It's a damn shame, too, because in the few scenes he's actually allowed to emote or just soak in the sun, he does look like a damn good Superman. But again, it's the stranger wearing someone's face phenomenon. He never feels like he's earnestly giving it his all as this character. He feels like he's still posing for the costume test or a magazine publicity shoot, which isn't helped by the constant actual poses they're putting him in to really drive home that Jesus metaphor. Constantly comparing Clark to a god does nothing but reduce him from the complicated and wholly unique character that decades of authors have slowly sculpted him into, and it instead places him in the extremely limiting role of really important guy who has to make a sacrifice. I won't dwell on him too long because he's received a lot of hate, body shaming, and genuine threats over playing this role, which sucks, but this performance also sucks. It is the definition of a fancy car with no engine. He never comes off as sincere. He has the energy of a twist villain in a movie, where you know the twist is coming, which is ironic considering Snyder's plans for where this character would have wound up. If you're going to have Clark become a villain later down the line, you need to establish that contrast early on. If your plan a decade into the future was for Clark to fall to Darkseid and become an evil warlord, he should have been the kindest, chillest guy for this first movie. He should have been Siegel and Schustered out at all fucking times. But an actor is only as strong as their co-stars, so this Superman might as well be made out of paper. Costner and Lane aren't doing an awful job as Clark's parents, excluding the whole, sucked into a dust devil moment, but they always feel like they're acting in a stage play with Clark, not being genuinely the warm, loving people they're supposed to be. At most, these two only get a handful of lines and a few knowing glances. So who's left? Well, we've got Amy Adams as Lois Lane, who might as well be a mannequin. She has no personality besides journalist, she has no motivation besides inexplicably loving Clark the moment they meet. I mean, she's the definition of cookie cutter. They have to magically beam Kryptonian tech info into her brain for her to be even mildly useful during the final act. Why not have her be the one leading the Daily Planet through the wreckage like you have Perry White doing? And we find ourselves at our villain, Zod. Much like Superman 2, you've got a movie with weird tonal issues and a lot of product placement being pulled forward by a pretty great villain. Sure, it's hammy, but Terrence Stamp did the same damn thing in Superman 2, and we all love it. And if you need anyone to out-ham Terrence Stamp, you call Michael fucking Shannon. This dude is having so much fun every single second he's on screen. But not like Jim Carrey the Riddler fun where he's laughing his ass off. I mean the kind of fun where you get sick of your coworkers' shit and decide to get plastered and ruin the office Christmas party.
I will find him!
If you love Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, you at least have to respect what Shannon is going for here, even if it doesn't work the entire time. And it's a damn shame that he's tied directly to the absolute worst scene in any solo Superman film. Yes, even factoring in the later Reeve movies. Superman can't kill. End of story. Especially in a series of movies where you're supposed to be scared of the concept of Superman becoming evil and killing people. That's all I'll leave it at because this scene has been discussed since the movie was released. 4 out of 10. Less of a Superman movie and more of just a demo reel for the worst aspects of 2010 cinema. This movie isn't unique enough to hate, it's simply another along the long assembly line that we were going through at the time. Only one left. Thank God.
This is terrible. We're in a terrible situation. We're in a terrible situation.
Final movie, here we go. The last theatrically released Superman up until this week. How is it?
Bullshit. That's how I feel. Total fucking bullshit.
This right here is where the wheels fell off for me. The opening scene of this movie is where I am no longer ambivalent about Snyder as a writer or director, and instead start openly detesting the man. If Man of Steel was a giant monument to the focus groups and corporate thinking of 2010's genre filmmaking, then this movie is the crumbled statue of Ozymandias, littering the desert with its shattered pieces of broken, needless grandiosity. Look upon Zack's works, ye mighty, and despair, for there is no wreckage to cling to in this storm of self-seriousness, black-hearted moral apathy and plot points only before posited by your older stoner cousin in his basement while playing Arkham City after 3 bong rips out of a fucking Gatorade bottle. Again, I say, if the big moral quandary of this movie is that Superman might kill people one day, you probably shouldn't have him killing regular-ass human beings with impunity. Oh, but Lois is being held hostage. There was no other option. Yeah, if you're not faster than a speeding bullet, it's in the tagline. He's faster than bullets. Both of these movies have people earnestly defending some of the worst moments in them with, well, there was no other option, when I'd argue that at least a third of all Superman comics ever published have a moment where Superman has an impossible issue to solve. This is like if there was an edgy reboot of Doctor Who, and they had the Doctor just shoot the episode villains point blank in the chest with a 38 every week. You're taking a character who is known for doing the impossible and dragging them down to your level, the easy level, and it's absolutely wild that this entire movie hinges on this altercation being a shady, false flag operation that frames Superman for murder, when he actually does just murder this guy. Like, Lois's whole subplot is about trying to prove that Clark is innocent when she saw him run a human man through 5 brick walls like a fucking freight train. If you wanted a story where Superman's morals and willingness to kill are investigated and speculated on by the US government, why not just have them investigate him for the death of Zod in the last movie and spare us from yet another subplot that goes nowhere? Trust me, this movie has a lot of those to spare. But we've already covered my issues with this Clark. What about our new characters? Sorry, I meant our new mouthpieces. We've got quite a few, and they all make me want to tear my hair out. Yes, I know, I still want to. First up, we've got Joseph, the King of Dreams himself, Ben Affleck as Batman, and all of his problems can be summed up in one line of dialogue. Criminals are like weeds, Alfred. You pull one up, another one will grow in its place. This is about the future of the world. This is my legacy. Go fuck yourself. That's not Batman. Batman, the Caped Crusader, in a one-man duel against the very essence of crime and evil, the Dark Knight with his squire riding out every night to fight an enemy that's older in time and bigger than all of us, would never, in a million years, state that fighting criminals is a waste of time because there's always more of them. That's the kind of rash, fatalist line that only a Batman at his earliest moments should ever even consider saying. I'm talking like just invented batarangs early, not a Batman who's at the end of his career. This is my legacy. Christ alive. Yeah, Bruce, the most important moment in your life is that time you slap-fought Superman in a warehouse. Sure, not the day you made your solemn vow against evil, not the day you adopted Dick Grayson, not the death of Jason Todd, not the reclamation of Gotham from a dynasty of crime families, not anything in the last 25 odd years you've been Batman in continuity. This moment is your legacy. People, this Bruce Wayne isn't a character. He's a device, a tulpa for the story to lean on. Before he becomes aware of Superman's existence, he does not exist, and the moment he's needed for the story, he springs forth fully formed with a backstory and decades of operating as Batman. They build him up as quickly as possible and then turn him into an easily tricked rube who has nothing to do in the final minutes of this story, and so just stands around awkwardly while Wonder Woman and Clark handle everything. And the killing thing. I will not dwell on this, because again, smarter people have torn this apart better than I ever could. But all I'll just say is this. I am under the belief that Bruce's beliefs and morals should only deepen as he ages. A Bruce Wayne approaching 50 should never, and I mean ever, kill anyone. And you can show me all the cherry-picked out-of-context Dark Knight Return panels you want. I don't care. I read that book, you guys. It's not just the book all the Snyder fans use for gotcha moments. It's actually a widely popular and highly acclaimed piece of comic history. And I never once read it with the takeaway that Bruce was a killer in it. Maybe the Joker, but if that, then only the Joker. Full stop. And oh, right, speaking of characters famous for their compassion and empathy who are turned into soulless killers, Wonder Woman. Let's not keep speaking about her. She's in this movie for maybe 19 minutes max, and most of it is a CGI fight with a cave troll. Gal Gadot cannot act and is a terrible human being. Moving on. Alexander Luthor, the piss wizard himself, Jolly Ranchero Supreme, the absolute worst thing about this movie. Believe me, I get what Snyder and Eisenberg were going for here. I don't care. It's embarrassing to watch. It's like watching the one kid in class who thinks he's the funniest comedian in the world get one pity chuckle. Let's have him sigh and moan and mutter a lot. Get it? He's probably autistic. Isn't that crazy? Let's have him never shut the fuck up about gods because this movie uses symbolism like a 2x4 across your nose. Let's have him discover Batman's secret identity off screen. Let's have him waste this movie's time with a random bombing plot and waste it even more with needless speeches about how cool what we're seeing is.
Blah, blah, blah. True! No. No, what am I? Boys! Ow! Wow!
I don't think I've hated a comic book movie villain like this in a long time, because this is not Lex Luthor, this is a Zack Snyder self-insert, a twitchy guy who will not shut the fuck up about his obsession with mythological symbolism, the genius who orchestrated all of this with layers and layers of machinations, leading to the knockdown, drag-out fight between our two heroes. If you think he's not deep, well then your tiny human mind just can't comprehend it. Oh, the humanity. No one could have seen Luthor's twists and traps before they were right where they wanted them. And now he can finally prove to the world that Superman is a flawed, violent god, like he's always been shouting from the rooftops. He even has the superpowers of a character who knows he's in a movie. When this movie thinks it needs Doomsday, Luthor just magically knows how to MacGyver him out of a naked Michael Shannon, a pool of Kryptonian water, and his own blood. How? Well, because Luthor now really wants to kill Superman in the last 30 minutes of this movie. His plan. So now we gotta introduce Doomsday. Doomsday is one of the things that got me into comics. The first issue of any comic I ever read was Adventures of Superman 500, the beginning of the reign of the Supermen. So of course I wanted to go back and read about the monster that caused all of this, that killed Superman. It was damn compelling stuff. He took out the entire Justice League with one hand tied behind his back. And it's maddening that since his creation, we've never gotten this Doomsday in a live-action movie. He's always someone transforming into Doomsday, not Doomsday himself. He's Bizarro, or he's Sam Witwer, and here he's Zod. This movie has enough going on. It doesn't need Zod, and it definitely doesn't need Zod cosplaying as Doomsday. And it's a shitty cosplay, too. There is no menace to this design. He looks like a frightened ape or a cave troll. Your design in a $250 million blockbuster should not be getting mogged by 3 CW TV shows. The poor little guy looks lost. Someone help him. You dragged this frightened, smooth chimp out of his cozy little hole just so you could shank him and so Clark could quote-unquote die. The death of Superman's story arc should never be a flaccid surprise or twist in an unrelated story. It should be the title of the damn story, because the death of Superman is as inevitable a title as you can get. You know from the cover alone what's about to happen, and yet you, the reader, and Clark still walk out to face that threat, even though you know it'll only end one way. That's Superman. Doing the right thing even when you know the odds are against you. He's not about stopping complicated plots involving Darkseid and Lex Luthor manipulating Batman. He's not about fighting Zod until all that's left of Metropolis is a smoldering pile of ash. He's not about lifting a massive chunk of kryptonite into space, or fighting a nuclear male model, or saving Richard Pryor from a giant computer, or throwing Zod and his cronies through the wall of a KFC, or even, yes, stopping a real estate scam. He's just a kind neighbor. He'll watch your kids for a few hours while you visit your dad in the hospital, or he'll dive headfirst into oncoming traffic if it means getting an old woman out of the way. He's the kind of man who works tirelessly to free people from collapsed mines, or smash the Klan, or yes, even save a cat from a tree. The kind of villains Superman should face should always be others attempting to impede him from doing these kind actions in some way. Luthor, Zod, Doomsday, Mongol, Toyman, Cyborg Superman, Ultra Humanite, Parasite, Darkseid, all of them. They all fight Clark because at a fundamental base level, they can't understand the concept of kindness. Clark Kent knows what kind of man he is. He's a Superman. This movie gets a 3 out of 10. Thank you and have a great day.
Batman versus Superman. Fuck them and the horse they rode in on.